Hi everyone, welcome to Lawyer Up Podcast. This is your host John Ting. This is a bonus episode, a series, the first in a series of at least five for related to starting your law firm. A hot topic that most attorneys ask about is case management system. Now, there's been questions about my case. How is that? How is Clio? Um, I think some people use FileVine. That seems to be a new one, or Legal Camp, I believe, is another. Uh, we actually use one called 17hats.com. It's not specific to the legal industry, but it really solves all our issues. I know that other software companies have significantly improved their services, however, features. We've had 17 Hats for at least since 2017. It has a feature where instead of a case, they call it a project. But one of the main features we like is workflow automation, where for immigration practice, most of the steps are the same for every case. So if the first step is for me to create the case itself, then in Dropbox, for example, and we share that folder, then I'll click check it off, and then it will send the next step to our team member. And after she completes that, then the next step could be, to follow up with the client. That could be our team member, or it could be myself. We basically have different to-dos, essentially, / tasks that we each take care of. And anytime one person completes their task, they check it off, check mark it, and then it'll assign it directly to the other person. And you can click a button where it says, all your to-dos, and you can categorize them. And categorize, you can have it, there's a drop-down menu, one for the other team member, or for each user, essentially, or you can view them all together, and then you can sort them by the earliest deadline or the latest deadline. Another feature we like is focus on your business itself, your operations in terms of the finances. And they do have something called bookkeeping. And so these features usually are on the left side of the screen and as a sidebar. And one of the reports, you can see all your aged receivables or aged receivables where people owe you money. So you don't have to dig in and go to each specific client because it's already there in the report. It has saved us a lot of time. We normally honestly don't follow up with our clients because we have different type of payment options. We can discuss later in a different episode. But essentially, we usually don't have an issue, at least the past 3 years since we've had 17 Hats, about collections. So we've been able to resolve that issue from before. And the report shows between like 0 to 30 days late, or 30 to 60, and then 60 to 90, for example. So you can see how far outstanding it is, how long it's been outstanding. 17 Hats also allows you to, after you create a case or / project, you can create something called life cycle. So for example, we put down that they've completed the lead form, essentially intake form. Then after that, we have a phone conference or some kind of a phone or video conference. And then after that, if they would like our services, we send them a proposed contract by email. And after they've signed that contract and paid, we'll manually go into the life cycle and click the drop down and say it's been completed. So in a way, that allows us to know how many cases or how many potential clients are pending, because you can set a default setting in 17 Hats where it lets you know if there's pending potential clients where you need to follow up. So even if at stage 1, where you've only had the intake form, you can follow up and set it to remind you in, let's say, 7 days or 14 days. But of course, you don't want so much time to go by. And of course, it depends on a client or a potential. Of course, it depends on a potential client. Maybe they say they're interested, but they need to wait at least for next month's pay period. Then you just set it for a different time period to follow up. But at least 17 Hats lets you have a default setting. so that you don't let this potential case go by. And you would think that they may, potential client may follow up with you if they're really interested, but they could get distracted, and maybe another friend or a coworker recommends another lawyer. So it's really important to follow up, and 17 Hats has resolved that issue for us as well. In fact, been able to we've been able to follow up with potential clients where they've contacted us a year ago, and we just put a notes and put a to do from a year from then to follow up, because we recommended to wait until after they've been married for 2 years. Because, for example, they've already been married for a year by the time they contact our firm, and we discussed the whole situation about remove conditions. And usually most of our clients, when they apply for adjustment, they literally just got married last week, or they're about to get married within a month. So that can kind of give you an idea where you can provide some value to the potential client, even though they may not have actually retained you yet. And you can still follow up with them by showing, and they will sign up with you because you provide them some significant value, which is not paying an attorney twice, essentially, to do 2 different cases, even though it's necessary, of course. Following up with leads is very important, because when I looked at my firm, let's say 10 years ago, or sorry, following up with leads is very important, because when I looked at my numbers from 6 years ago, 8 years ago, I noticed that we were doing a poor job at following up, and that's lost revenue. And it's not necessarily they're not following up with you. It's not their fault that they didn't follow up with you. It's our fault. It's on us to follow up, because that we as attorneys, we know there's a lot of other attorneys, and we need to provide value to the person, even though they're not a retained client yet. And there's so many attorneys that they could easily just go to another person, because in their mind they're just thinking, oh well, each attorney is doing the same thing, they just fill out forms. Of course, there's a lot more to that we know. Or ultimately they could go hire a notary, which is sometimes significantly cheaper, and sometimes it charges as much as we do as attorneys. So that's why it's important to have at least pick a case management system that has a lead and a follow-up system that lets you change the settings if necessary, or however you choose. I talked about sending a contract earlier. There is a dashboard, essentially, that shows you how many contracts you've sent out that are still pending. So that's very significant in our mind, because again, potential clients can get busy, right? They're human just like us, where we get busy as well. But we need to have systems in place to remind ourselves that we need to follow up. And so we've already done significant work in having a consultation, sharing the potential strategies in their case, taking time to make sure that the contract fits their case. I mean, we have default contracts for each particular case, let's say for adjustment of status, where someone's entered the country, or adjustment of status, where it involves 245I. We have different fee structures for each type of case. Granted, most cases are very similarly priced, but of course, as you know, some clients need to do a FOIA, so that costs extra. That's more time involved, not just to, of course, request it, but to review the documents when we do receive from the government, and not just review, but analyze it with the client and share that information with them. So when we share email the contracts to the client, this provides us an opportunity to follow up with them, because let's say a month had passed, and we don't want to assume that they just were disinterested. We need to assume that they've just been busy. And for us, fortunately, that's been the case, whether they just had something personal or something at work they had to attend to. And we completely understand that's how we are at our business too. We have to reprioritize certain cases because of deadlines. And in terms of the contracts through 17 Hats, one of the features we like with that is they call it tokens, where certain places in the template contract you can insert their name. So let's say insert first name, you can do that. Insert full name, you can do that as well. And for our payment options, we have 3 different types. So we ask them to select the type by writing down, typing in which one they choose. So for example, we call it world class as the first one, VIP, and then value. So we'll talk more about that in a different episode. But again, this is a way that it's very clear which option they choose, so we don't have to rely on them verbally telling us, and then there could be a misunderstanding when we're asking, send them an invoice, and they're saying, well, we don't have to pay it now, but they selected the one where, let's say they requested expedited service, so they have to pay that fee sooner, of course, right? So that's why we ask them to type it in, even if they end up signing it and then forget, we send the contract again, because we just don't want any misunderstanding in the future. Now, the caveat to this electronic signature is that unlike other programs such as HelloSign, DocuSign, which is no more real estate industry usually uses that. Even Adobe has a feature where you can send out for signature. It doesn't quote unquote authenticate it in the sense that it doesn't show a second page or a subsequent page that shows their timestamp and their email address that we send it to. But fortunately, we don't think that's an issue. The fact that they've signed it electronically, at least for us, is fine. And we're not sending this to the government or anything where they need to authenticate it. So we've had Adobe Signature feature before where that costs about at least $115 per year if you pay in full. But I found that it doesn't have the features where you can insert their name, where it just trickles down. Because if in 17, once you already created the contact, the name and the phone number, their address, you can insert those as a token into the document itself, the contract. Now, it also has a feature where you can add multiple people to sign. So if a person has a different email address, you have to add that as a secondary contact. And we've had situations or cases where clients where their spouse doesn't have a separate email, they use the same email, and that's okay, as long as we send it to an email address, then they're able to sign it. So of course, especially with the immigrant population, some folks might not have an email address, so we'll still create it in 17 and we'll print it out for our clients. Fortunately, we've only had maybe a handful, maybe less than 5 that needed it printed out for a handwritten old school signature. So 17 Hats also has templates for many other things, such as emails. Something I was looking for back in 2017 is emails where you're asking for certain evidence or to follow up with clients. In Dropbox, we include our checklist for the client, so there's no issue of attaching a document to the email. But 17 Hats allows the email templates to actually have a template. Now, my recommendation is in your file name for the document that you're attaching, put version 2017 or whatever helps you, or the current year, 2020 now, so that you know which version you're sharing. Because eventually, when the government requirements change and may need less or more requirements, then you'll know to update it. You know which one that you're about to send out may be outdated, so you can substitute or replace it in the attachment, the email template. Other templates, we have a lot of email templates set up through 17 Hats, and just going through the whole life cycle of a case. It can also include sending out in conclusion of case, or congratulations, you received your resident card. Attached are different additional resources that can help you. For example, talking about advising about the next step of removing conditions. So we have more tips on that in a different episode coming up on how other ways to remind clients. But in terms of the email templates, we think it's saved us a significant amount of time. First 5 years of my practice, whether it's our team members or myself, I found that we're just repeating very similar information to our clients. So I would say this, in terms of emails, this has saved us at least 75% of our time in contrast from before. So please consider a case management software that has that. And so this email templates, again, they also have the insert token, such as, insert hi, and then insert token like your first name or full name, and then go has the content of the email. You can also have different email signatures, and you just title it. For example, the email signature could have for yourself. You get multiple ones for each user. So if you have different offices around the country, you can have one for Houston, or you can have one for Dallas, because we have two different websites. They point to the same website, but maybe clients, or in our mind, clients prefer to see the same corresponding city, for example. But if you have a different brand that you have, then that shouldn't be an issue. But anyway, you can have a different signature for your assistant, or other, paralegal, or other associate attorneys. Other templates that they have include questionnaires. So before we transition from, in terms of immigration forms, from INS Zoom to DocketWise, which we'll talk about in a second, we created questionnaires as a template. So, for example, questions related to I-130, or just adjustment status. We had this questionnaire that we emailed out to the client, instead of sending our old school attached template, 1 or 2 page template asking questions. So again, they don't have to download it. We want to make the job as easy as possible for our clients, But this questionnaire, even though we have DocketWise now, which I think is a great software program, especially in comparison to INS Zoom, we have saved a lot of time, even from not using the questionnaire, but in the 17 Hats. But 17 Hats questionnaire is actually very helpful. For example, we ask questions for waiver related cases where we want to dig in more, investigate more about their hardship, and so DocketWise doesn't have that type of option right now. Maybe they will in the future. Maybe they have it now, and I just don't know. But so we use 17 Hats for that as a questionnaire, and also you can send a reminder for clients to fill out the questionnaire. So when they fill it out, they can save it as a draft and then return to it later. There's no expiration date for them to complete it later. But of course, we try to remind them every 1 or 2 weeks. And then later on, when they click the link again from their email, they can officially submit it, and then it will automatically send us an email to let us know that it's been completed, so we can follow up. And so I would advise letting your clients know that, because same thing for contracts, because it will automatically send you email that it's been signed. But I recommend letting your clients know that after they hit submit or sign it, that you will receive it automatically, so that there's, you can save both sides time, because our time, we focus our time on working on the actual case, and of course following up on leads. And I'll share another tip about how we reduce time on the phone in general. In terms of calendars and emails, it can sync. We have Google server, and so it syncs with that. At least it appears to sync with a lot of different email servers, but it has a calendar on the dashboard. We used to only use the Google Calendar for setting different deadlines, setting a reminder for a deadline. We still use the Google Calendar for the reminder, but in terms of setting up a deadline, we go into 17 Hats first, and then it will sync to our Google Calendar. So we want to insert or add a specific reminder, let's say a month from now, or a month from the deadline, or 15 days from the deadline. We can do that through Google, but not through 17 Hats. But I still like it, for example, because the email syncing, because we use Calendly, and also syncs with that. The email feature in 17 Hats is amazing. It has saved us, again, a lot of time in terms of communicating between our team members and myself, because even with a different username, our team member can go into a specific project or case file, uh, case, and he or she can see all the email correspondence between myself and the client. And so that saves us time because then she doesn't have to necessarily ask us, oh, what did y'all talk about? Because this client just called and, I don't want our team to appear that they don't know what's going on. They definitely know what's going on in terms of each case, but there could have been some kind of communication where client told us they're going to send us this, but then one of our team members asked for the same document that I just asked about yesterday. So we don't want to burden the client on that. There is on the bottom section of the case where you can input your notes. So for example, we put in our strategy in that section. If they contact us and we have a conversation with the client, when I say contact me by phone, then there's actually a different section called phone log. And phone log is one of the features where you can see it from your main dashboard. And so if it's a note, you wouldn't see that in your dashboard. You have to go into the specific client's folder. But in terms of seeing it from your dashboard to save time, we can, on the right sidebar, you can see the different phone log for any client. So that saves time and allows us to quickly see if there's anything significant. Of course, if there's something more urgent, our team members do let us know if we need to contact client as soon as possible. We'll talk about our communication policy in a different segment. Now, I've talked a lot about what I like about 17 Hats. What I don't like is that it does not send you a daily digest of items that were completed. So that's why I like at least the features of the phone log, because you can see that straight from your dashboard. You can click on to-dos to see what is the most pressing deadline. We send invoice through 17 Hats, which also you can email reminders, automatic reminders. In terms of tech support, they've been pretty responsive. I know they've been a little bit less responsive the past year because I'm sure they've gained more client base, but they have a very significant portal or support base in terms of they have a lot of different tutorials on their website and also FAQs that probably answer your questions. Now, this is a question that most people may have, is how much it costs. I remember paying at least $199. That's very cost effective if you compare that to other case management systems where they, in a separate video, I do a compare and contrast of different case management software systems, but I at least want to share all the features that I liked about 17 Hats. Now, the $199, that comes out to about $16.50. And another thing about that is that's for one user. However, I've been able to add an additional user, and that has not been a cost to us. And they have their own login information. I have been able to buy additional plans. Well, it's the same plan, but additional subscription. Because at least in the last couple of years, they've had a deal on Black Friday. So when I bought it, it was for 2 years, and that was for $249. So that's even more significant savings. So keep an eye out for that. I hope you've gained some value from this episode. If you like the content, please hit subscribe below and hit like, and even click the bell for future notifications of our videos. We want to share all the tips and tricks that we've been able to utilize, because it's been at least since 2020 now. I started practicing in 2011. We've gone through a lot of different software, and we're very cost conscious because we try to be mindful of we want to keep our costs low, essentially. If we have to spend more, we want to make sure we get more value out of it. So that's something to keep in mind. Before you buy into a program, please do your research in terms of comparing of the plans. But we'll share more on other software. So please stay tuned, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.